Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'm the Dead Man, and I'm just here to do a very quick, very short review of Strange New Worlds, Season 3, Episodes 1 and 2. I'm not going to give a long overview of the plot, just some observations, some things that I wanted to say about each episode. Uh, so the first episode is just a the second part of the season 2 finale, Hegemony Part 2. And basically, what happened is the Gorn attack a colony, a Federation colony, and their Pike's girlfriend, I forget her name, is like impregnated with Gorn babies, like xenomorph style, and they treat the Gorn kind of like xenomorphs in Strange New Worlds, and there's not. Okay, so Kurtzman and company claim that this is the same continuity from TOS and everything that came since. But as nitpicking nerd, check out his channel, and he does a lot better job than me. Has pointed out, in TOS they don't have tails, and even Enterprise got that wrong. Or I think, well, did the Gorn on Enterprise have a tail? I don't remember. Maybe it didn't. I'd have to go back and look. And then so that so the first part ended with a call to retreat from Admiral April, which again, not the same continuity, because Robert April is white in TAS, so I guess they're not counting that. I know Roddenberry didn't count it. I count it. It was on screen, so it counts. And then, as again, so Pike turns to Uhura and says, did he say immediately retreat? And Uhura says no. And I didn't catch this when I was watching it, but again, nitpicking nerd called it. If you go back and look at the first part, he doesn't. He says immediately retreat. So I didn't catch that. Tip of the hat to nitpicking nerd for catching that. I actually didn't watch that first part before watching this, which I should have. I was thinking about it, and then I just said no. I'm just gonna judge this episode on its merits alone. Maybe next time, if there's a situation like a part 2 of whatever, I will go back and take some notes and compare them. And then so Pike uses this excuse, which is not an excuse, but we'll go with it, to go back and like try to save his girlfriend, and cause that's like the whole thing is like he wants to save everybody, but especially her, because she's dying. And they so he uses that excuse to kind of stay behind before retreating, and they I don't remember every detail. which is why I'm not going to recount the episode, the plot of the episode. But they there's a point where they go on the Gorn ship, and Leon is there, and Ortega is there, and they're in these little sacks, and basically they figure out that they're like digestation sacks. So kind of again like the xenomorph, and somehow they magically still have their phasers. Wouldn't the Gorn take their phasers? So that was kind of stupid. Um, don't get me wrong. There's definitely stupid moments in this episode, but um, overall, I actually enjoyed it, despite some of the things that nitpicking nerd pointed out. That I agreed with him. I agree with him on, and I mentioned, I even kind of made the same observations, like they use magic blood to save someone, save Pike's girlfriend, but it kills the Gorn babies. So they're seeking out new life. Well, where there it sits, as Picard would say, and they don't make an effort to save it in any way. And yeah, I guess it's the Gorn, but I mean they're babies, and they make, I don't know, that's sort of the mission. They're supposed to save people no matter what. Kind of like Superman. It's not like, Batman. In Batman Begins, he's like, I'm not gonna, I don't have to save you, but I don't have to, or I'm not gonna kill you, but I don't have to save you, which is a great line. And it gave him an out, basically, but still, you often see Batman saving the bad guy at at the last second with his grappling gun or whatever. But some of the observations from the first episode is they in the part one they use the same music, and it's it's the original series music, and it's you hear it in an arena, but it's not the fight music that you're thinking of. It's not that. It's not that. It's a different one. But it's not bum 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 bum. It's not that either. I tried to find it but I can't find it. But if you watch the episode, and you know TOS, you know that music, and I appreciate that they've done that quite a few times, because I've always wondered, like, if you watch some of the, like, that I appreciated in First Contact, where they use the Klingon music when Worf is doing his thing. I always like it when they kind of bring stuff like that back, or make it, or like when they do like an orchestral, instrumental of the TOS theme song, stuff like that. That's very cool, and I'm a sucker for stuff like that. Things that annoy me is that when they want to talk to somebody within the ship, they just talk to them like on TNG you have to hit the comm badge to talk to somebody, and in TOS and Enterprise they have the wall communicator thing where they press the button, there's a speaker there, and they speak into it to wherever they're, say if they're talking to Scotty or whatever, and then on the bridge he has a button on his chair. They don't do that. I don't think I saw Pike one time press a button on the chair and communicate to somebody. Maybe I missed it, but it seemed like they're just communicating out into the air and somebody else on the other end, you know, receives it. Uh, so they get some details right, like the music and the overall look of the ship and stuff, even though it's I would prefer it to be a little bit closer to TOS. You know, the neck is too short. People have pointed out the little space in between in the neck, the empty space. The pylons are not straight up; they're swooped back. Um, of course, Pike's quarters is way too big, but there's less people. There's less crew on the ship, so that can be fixed. They could end it by having a complete a refit. If they did that, that would be fine. The bridge, I think, also could be a little bit closer to. I mean, they did. It has improved, but I want more. I want more. So it's weird how they get some details right, and then get other details completely wrong. And then, like I said, they use Una. She has like magic blood, which we've seen before, that can heal people, and it heals. Because that's the thing, is that they're trying to put Pike's girlfriend into stasis, but she's allergic to the drug that you have to take to go into stasis. So they're trying to come up with another solution, and uh, and so they come up with this magic blood. You know, it's so stupid. Uh, Nitpicking nerd points out that I think the doctor, or you know, uh, Chapel. I think either the doctor or Chapel uh, says something like "no more needles," and he took that like literally. Like the hyper sprays don't have needles, which is good observation. It could be just an expression, though. It could be just a turn of phrase, you know. Uh, uh, you know, that didn't bother me so much. Uh, there are points in the episode where Pike is in total command. There, he's asking for options, like Picard would do, or sometimes Kirk would do. They give him options. Some of them he doesn't like, and he turns them down. So it's not, you know, it's not girl bossing over here. Um, they give him a little more, you know, uh, you know, a little more franchise or whatever the, the the term is. Agency. Sorry. Uh, they give him a little more agency, so he's not being, you know, told what to do or bossed around by the girls. Although there is somewhat some of that, because the women are the ones that come up with all the solutions. There's not one man. Like Kirk's brother is just kind of played for jokes, uh, which I had to remind myself that was Kirk's brother. Kirk's not even in this at all. Scotty is kind of played for jokes, but Scotty's always kind of played for jokes. Um, but he does do some cool shit. You know, he works on you know, he does some cool shit in this. And then the another thing they get pretty good is the ship's computer sounds like Majel Barrett or close proximity. The only thing is like at this time the ship's computer is more crude and more robotic, so it should be say working, like that. It's like why can't they do that? This is before TNG, and this is even before TOS. So it should be the ship's computer should be less human sounding. In so they on the Borg. The Gorn ship is like super huge, and it reminded me like of the Borg, and a lot of this reminds me of the Borg. And so Ortega's, they're in those these digestion sacks, and they are able to escape. And Ortega's is like injured. Well, they're shooting at the Gorn and they're firing, And Ortega's is injured, and they find like a Gorn ship that they can use to escape. And of course, Ortega's is the only one that can fly it. Even though she's injured, she's the only one that can fly it. So again, like I said, stupid. That was one of the observations that I had written down that nitpicking nerd always also pointed out. And again, he also pointed out, the Gorn, the Borg. It's like the Borg. It's like when Data had to put the Borg to sleep. There's like two suns that are kind of merging into each other, and in the middle there's like this, somehow it makes, when the Gorn ship flies through it, it makes them invisible. And I guess on the other side of this thing is their homeworld, and they figure out that through technobabble and science timey, bullshit, basically, that a solar flare will trigger a hibernation period. But they, Scotty's like, you can't make a sun create a flare. And so Pike's, like, how about we make like an artificial flare and use the Enterprise and the shields to kind of create like an artificial flare, and that'll trigger the hibernation period. And they have like long hibernation periods, and so they do that, and I thought that was kind of like, and they're using the shields, and they don't really explain how any of this works. So yeah, there's definitely flaws. It's and when you think about a solar flare, I mean, how often is there a solar flare, and aren't they pretty random? So you're telling me their hibernation periods are like random? I don't know. It didn't really make sense. And then there's other parts of the episode where Chapel's there and Spock's talking to her, and he's apologizing for how they left things last time, and this stuff, all this weird stuff. And so it's more Cry Spock and Cry Trek. They love doing that. They just love doing that. And the other thing about binary stars is like usually, as far as I know, there's usually a bigger star and a smaller star, and they kind of orbit each other. Uh, and then if you have planets, that are orbiting those stars, so you wouldn't have like these two almost equally. It looked to me like they were equally sized stars, and they're kind of merging together into one or something like that. I don't know. And you see the ship. I mean, it's the star is like. I mean, how big is the star? It's fucking weird. So yeah. Again, I already mentioned Ortegas. Once again, we have this magical ability to fly an alien ship. You see now, this is throughout all of Star Trek, so it can't just fault Strange New Worlds. Enterprise did it notoriously, and I'm almost certain we've seen it in the other series. And it's just, I mean, they've got totally different languages, totally different controls, totally different everything, and then somehow they're just able to figure it out. They're just that good. And then so I guess the hibernation that they triggered lasts until that episode of original series Arena. So however long, I don't even remember where we're at in the timeline, because it, and towards the end she's like, I fly the ship, which is a callback to another episode where she loses her memories, and like everybody had kind of lost their memories or something. I don't remember which episode that was, but I remember her constantly saying that, I fly a ship, I fly a ship, And so, those are just some of the observations, some of the plot points. I thought it was overall it was a solid episode, but definitely I'm not gonna give it a rating. Maybe a 7.5. There's good action. There's good things in it. It's good enough to me to, I'd say overall good episode, but definitely some stupid shit that they just cannot not do for some reason. So that's episode 1. Episode 2 is Wedding Bells. And it starts off with the ship is being repaired by those repair robots, which I fucking hate. So dumb. I hate it. Why don't we see them anywhere else in the future? Why don't we see that? We don't. They just had to, introduce some stupid crap. And so the interior of the ship, you have Spock is learning or practicing dancing with Leon, Christina Chong, whatever you want to call her. And she's got like this kind of like black leotard pants and tight shirt, and really showing off her assets. And she looks great, by the way. Probably, I mean, she's fucking hot. But she's teaching, Spock had a dance because there's um, what is it, the Federation bicentennial or something, and she's saying he's not loose enough. He's, it's kind of like Data, he's not loose enough, but and Spock notes that he, knows all the moves and blah blah blah. He does his Spock thing, and I would note that Ethan Peck is getting better at like Spock mannerisms when he is being Spock and not being Spork or Cry Spock. You, uh, when he's not doing that, when he's actually being Vulcan-y, I think he's gotten better at it. So Chapel arrives with Dr. Corby, and Spock wants to give her a gift, and then basically Corby is Chapel's date to the Centennial, and so that kind of hurts Spock's feelings, and he goes to sit down to. Everybody's kind of chit chatting in the I don't know what they call it. It's like the mess hall, I guess, or there's a bar. I don't know what it is. I don't think we ever saw this part of the ship on TOS. So he sits down and have a drink at the bar while because they're all you know whatever, lovey-dovey or whatever you want to call it. And Corby has a Scottish accent for some reason. I don't recall him having a Scottish accent in TOS. But he sits down and have a drink. And first of all, Vulcans don't drink alcohol, but it could be just a regular non-alcoholic drink. Maybe. I'll give them benefit of the doubt on that. They don't say one thing or another. It's not like he says whiskey, sour or whatever, or on the rocks or vodka, He just asks for like some sort of weird whatever drink. And we see the bartender. So he sees the bartender as a Vulcan. He's like, I don't recall having a Vulcan on bartender. And we see the bartender as just like a regular human with like an Irish type accent or something. And he's like, I don't remember what he says, but to paraphrase, it looks like you're kind of down on your luck, or you got or whatever. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, how about you try this drink and then make a wish or something like that. And this one will make you feel better. So he takes the drink, wakes up the next day. I guess I am sort of recalling the plot like on this one, because I think it's memorable, and I'll tell you why. You'll know why in a minute. Takes the drink, wakes up, and Chapel is in his bed. And so it's like their wedding day. And he's kind of like all these everybody around him, and Corby's there, everybody around him sort of, they're all like, oh, it's your wedding, Spock, da 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 da, but Spock is like taken aback, and he's like, what the hell's going on? And he eventually at some point Corby, that's what it is. Okay, so no, Spock does not. There's nothing weird with Spock at this point he's going to it's his wedding day as far as he knows, right? But then at some point, Dr. Corby walks in and confronts Spock in his quarters, and uh, he's like telling him, "This isn't right. You're not getting married. You're not supposed to be getting married to Christine. She's my girlfriend. We're together." Da 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 da. And it pisses off Spock, so he punches him. Then he wakes up, or it punches him, and he passes out. And then I think Spock. That's when Spock kind of like realizes that something's wrong, and they both wake up in the bed together, which is a callback to a TNG episode. I think that's what they're trying to do. It's kind of like an awkward moment, and then they talk, and they're like, it seems like there's some sort of weird thing going on, and the only way to break the spell or whatever is is like for some sort of emotional response. Whether it's, I think they ended up settling on, instead of anger, it's love or something like that. And they kind of put two and two together, because in the earlier scene, the guy that we see as the bartender, so I think somebody mentions that he's Andorian. He looks Andorian. And we see on a pad that he looks Andorian in the pad, but to us, he still looks human, to the audience. So he's changed his appearance, and he's like a wedding planner. And so they link back to, okay, this all started when the wedding planner came aboard. And so something's fishy with the wedding planner. So they confront him. Spock confronts him, and he's like, I'm not going to play along with your whatever little game you're doing. And he's like, well, I'll kill everybody on the ship if you don't go along. And if you're not sure about it, and he shrinks him down into like a little glass cup and does a little snap. And that's okay. It's a cue, basically. And he's kind of dressed like Trelane. So, I mean, if you haven't figured it out by now, it's a cue. And they kind of play along with the wedding. Corby, they get to the wedding part, and Corby shouts out, he's like, I don't agree with this, and he turns him to a dog. And so then we get to the point where they say their wedding vows, and Spock makes a speech to Chapel, which Chapel snaps out of it. It causes Chapel to snap out of it. And then about that time, we see this little glowy thing, and it ends basically like the Squire Gothas ended, where he's a kid. I guess he's Q2. And the voice is John DeLance. So it's basically saying that Trelane was a Q. So all the things that we've been speculating for ever about, they finally say, okay, yeah, it's a Q. They don't announce that they're a Q, but you see the snap, you see the all the Q stuff there. And then that's about it. I mean, I think there was one other thing. Oh, they're all dancing. They're all celebrating the centennial, and then at the very end, they have to shove this stupid shit in. Oh, and like Ortega's brother is there, and there's other things going on, but at the end, Ortega, like, everybody's dancing, and she has like this pissed off look on her face, and she takes off, and I guess Pike looks over and sees it, and she's like punching a punching bag, and then you see like she's thinking about the Gorn that like stabbed her in the previous episode, so she has PTSD now. So they're gonna probably drag that out for at least a few episodes, if not the whole season, which I could give a shit less. I mean, I do not care. This character is annoying. I don't like her. I like Leanne, but I think they're gonna have to kill her off or uh, make her like a part of the Daniels group and erase her from the timeline or something. I don't know how they're going to deal with all that. So, some of the observations I had for this episode, by the way, it's called Wedding Bell Blues. Hate the repair bots. Christine Chung already said, shows she has some really nice assets. I like Chapel's hair. Um, you know, again, they killed off the Gorn babies. Find no way to save them. Ethan Peck is getting better at Nimoy and Spock mannerisms. There's a point where they wear civilian clothes, which is bright and colorful for the most part, and not earth tones like we see in TNG and oftentimes TOS. Really, throughout every series, when they're civilian clothes, it's all earth tones. It also gave me some like yesterday's Enterprise vibes. There's a NX-01 sighting, and then there's a point in the episode where they're passing out drinks, and Scotty's like, "Oh, I don't really drink that much," and which I know is meant to be funny, and I did kind of laugh, but it's like, Scotty doesn't drink? What? Okay, what made him turn into the big drinker that he is now? It also reminded me of This Side of Paradise, where Spock, there's those flowers with the spores, and Spock, falls in love with this woman and is hanging out with her, and then Kirk basically has to fight him in order to like break the spell. The so that's, I don't know if that was intentional, but that's what it reminded me of. Like, emotions break the spell, etc. In this side of paradise, it's like anger, I think. The Q2 or Q Junior or whatever you want to call him says that the planet that Kirby is on, doing like archaeological dig or whatever, was their old homeworld. So are they kind of setting up a Q origin story? Like what planet they're from, and how, because Q said at one point they used to be just like humans, and then they evolved. So I don't know. And then at the end, when they're doing the little celebration, "Wake Me Up Before You Go" comes on. and I'm just like, finally some fucking good in universe music. Usually, like on Discovery, they had like this one party, and they had like this. They're playing music at the party, and it's like electronica type shit, and that always is the go-to for like play movies or televisions set in the future. Is like they're not listening to rock and roll, they're not listening to, whatever, they're listening to this electronica crap. you know Maybe sometimes on the Enterprise D they'll be listening to Beethoven or something. So I thought it was cool that they used "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," which would be considered classical music at this. I don't know what it would be considered, but you know, uh, clearly people from the future in Star Trek. Some people like old stuff, like Tom Paris likes old sci-fi movies, or on Enterprise they watch, movies. Um, which is funny because I just did a review of an episode of Voyager where they're watching like soap operas, and Harry Kim's like complaining, like, how could you sit here and watch this when you could be a part of it, because they do things on the holodeck. So it's kind of interesting, and Tom Paris also likes old cars and likes, but there's people nowadays that do, fucking reenactments, that, villages that reenact, colonial times, and so it's not outside of the realm of possibility. So as an episode overall, I thought it was fine. I like Q episodes, so I'm kind of a sucker for that too. Um, so again, like probably 7.5 again. It wasn't. I didn't find too many plot holes or stupid shit, but I also haven't rewatched it, so I'm sure nitpicking nerd will probably find some stupid shit, because that's what he does. He's hence the name nitpicking nerd. But I was able to enjoy it just from what was presented to me. And like I said, that's what they do. They get you the first 2 or 3 episodes. They get you in, and then those middle episodes kind of suck, and then the last episode will kind of reel you back in again. And this is a much better. Now, Robert Meyer Burnett, I haven't seen his reviews. I don't know if he's even done reviews for this, but he absolutely hates New Trek. I'm willing to admit when they get things right, even on Discovery. But a lot of people have just checked out since 2009. A lot of people like Gary, gave it a chance, gave Discovery a chance, and then after the second season was just like, I'm out, I'm done. And we're talking about hardcore fans, Now there'll be people on the leftists that'll swear up and down that this is the greatest fucking thing ever. It's not. They have good moments and they have bad moments. Does the bad outweigh the good for Discovery? I think it does. Jury's still out for Strange New Worlds. I've enjoyed it mostly. There are some episodes that are kind of fucking stupid. You know, like I said, Robert Meyer Burnett, nitpicking nerd, will talk about the science and the technobabble, and it does have issues. Um, but they do. There are points where they use scientific ideas and theories in a clever way, and I'll give them credit for that. Um, I think I talked about Discovery, where it was in ice, and the ice started growing, and I looked that up, and that's kind of a real thing. It's not exactly real. The tardigrade, the mushroom network, so they take scientific ideas and um, sometimes they do good with them. I know they have a science advisor, and I think it's the same one from Discovery. Uh, the thing that Robert Meyer Burnett points out is that it seems like these writers have written, uh, never read science fiction. They've only watched like science fiction maybe on TV and movies, which I'm not a writer. I haven't read a whole lot of I haven't hardly any science fiction. I do only pretty much know it from TVs and movies. I've read some comic books, when I was little. I read some comic books when the new 252 came out, and I gave it a chance, and I hated it. Um, I'm familiar with Frankenstein, and I've seen the classic monster movies. Although I don't think I've seen the Black Lagoon. I don't think I've seen that. Might have to put that on the list for Halloween this year. Uh, but if you're going to be a writer, you know, the people that wrote for TOS, some of them were the same people that wrote for Twilight Zone, and these are like classical writers that they could go from show to show and write good episodes. You don't have that now these days, and I think Robert Meyer Burnett might be right, because because they knew about scientific theories going on in the science community, and would take that idea and kind of create their own story from it. And these people that write for Strange New Worlds kind of do that, but in a clunky way. And sometimes they hit it pretty good, but I feel like a lot of times they don't, or they do it in a way that's more I don't want to say like left leaning, but in a way that a left leaning person would kind of think. They think, perfect example is not saving or attempting to save the Gorn babies. I think they think it's better to kill the babies, if you know what I mean. A right-leaning person thinks it's better to not kill that baby. That's just a minor example without getting too political, but they don't science their way out of it through those type of means. Or the other thing is like the solar flare you know, there's nothing really political I can say about the. I think that I think you get my drift as far as like how these writers think and how their politics inform their thinking. Just that one example is probably nails it pretty spot on. Anyway, thank you for stopping by, or, or if you for people that's lurking, or thank you that for people that watch this in the future. I'm the Dead Man. You can catch my show, The Red Hour, 8 p.m. Eastern, where I do a random review of a Star Trek episode. And we're just talking classic TOS, TNG, D Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. So that's going to be all for